Hey, Dr. Goldhamer, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good to see you again. Thank you for doing this for us. Appreciate it.
So how's this new microphone working for you?
You sound awesome.
Good.
I'm so excited because I actually sent the uncut version of the video over to a cousin of mine in Miami who's come a long way. He's actually done a lot of things to help himself, and now through what I'm doing, he was really curious about you. So I sent him that right away. The minute I had it, I sent it over to him. And he was calling me from one of his walks, and he's saying, man, the information is awesome, but I'm just so distracted with the sound. Then I watched Chef AJ and I heard the same thing there. And I'm like, I was suffering from the same thing. And I'm thinking, oh no, I got to get this right one time because this information is just too awesome and too valuable. So thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Well, they put in a new, kind of professional level microphone. So it's supposed to be a lot better than the Logitech, whatever I had here before.
I can tell. It sounds brilliant. And I'm suffering the same pain right now. I'm leveling up my game because my mics are probably more in the Logitech space. They're just not as dynamic as these things that you have now that are amazing. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. And one day, maybe if I cook for you, maybe I can talk you and your wife to coming to Napa one day. And I have some cool things that I'd love to show you one day. Even a recording studio that I'm building. I love.
Excellent.
Anyways, you just wanted to dive in, kind of like last week. I just wanted to recap a little bit on how you and I crossed paths, and we really, I'm going to give Chef AJ probably 70% of the credit, 20% probably goes to Sherry at the Watery Mouth, and the 10% we'll just give it to the powers that Google search engines and everywhere. Rich Roll, definitely watch your episode with Rich Roll and all the exposure and success that has brought forth. But it's just, the more I listened to you, the more I got ahead of going to TrueNorth, because the one thing that you probably didn't brag enough about was where in the world TrueNorth is in comparison to where I live. So I didn't realize that you're like right next door. I thought you were somewhere obscure, Vermont, something really different. So my assumptions were bad. So it just forced me to go SOS. And by going SOS free, then led me to, my SOS has a couple more acronyms. Maybe we go into SOS A because I took out all the alcohol. I don't drink a lot, but I took that out. And then I'm going SOS A C for caffeine because I'm
yeah, we always assume that people are drug free. So
yeah. And would caffeine be considered a drug?
Absolutely. It's a highly addictive nervous system drug.
That's
a 7-hour half-life, has terrible side effects. Even though 90% of the population use it, it is absolutely an addictive drug that needs to be eliminated, in my opinion.
Oh man, you're making my heart just pound really hard because it triggers.
Not as hard as caffeine does.
Thank you. Touche. Yeah, I love the look. It just happened that, I've been taking all these medications over the years to try to fight calming me down. Taking me off of caffeine was the actual cure for my inability to stay rational and patient, even in my 35-year marriage.
Yeah. Well, if you were using cocaine, it wouldn't be surprising that might have some benefit. And this has a very similar kind of neurochemical effect. So
I want to go more into caffeine if we can. And then just to finish off that thought, I just, once I realized that your place was literally 30, 40 minutes away from me, I went in and checked in for about 4 days after I'd already, based on SOS AC free living, I lost 40 pounds in about 12 weeks. Now about 60 pounds down, probably another 30 pounds to go, and it'll be a 100-pound journey. And with your help, it's just been wonderful. The longer I go without sugar, oil, and salt, the more I could abstain from it, the less I desire it, and it's literally becoming a thing of the past. It really reminds me, it's very parallel to when I used to smoke cigarettes. I quit smoking when my wife got pregnant with my daughter, and this is 35 years ago. And it was time. It required time for me to stop the need or needing or that sensation to to go back to a cigarette. So I just needed time. I feel it's similar. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's more difficult in a way because you don't have to smoke or drink, but you do have to eat.
Yeah.
And you live in a world, society that's designed to give you what you want, not what you need. And what you want is a way to indulge in the pleasure trap without paying the price. And what you need is a method of escaping the pleasure trap. And that's where if you can't do it on your own, fasting can be sometimes helpful.
And so I'm glad you brought that up because I talked to a great friend of mine. He talked to you. This person, highly intelligent, very successful, has bought and sold businesses from the time he was in his early 20s. And right now he's built a real estate platform worth billions of dollars. And he gets it. I mean, at the intellectual level, he gets it, but he struggles just like I do, even though he's about 20 years younger than I am. He's in his 30s. He struggles with the pleasure trap. So the minute I talked to him about you and he reached out and asked me what was I doing, it was really, I had a lot of fun having the conversation with him because I just watched him lose 80 pounds and put 60 of them back on. And he knows he's on the slippery slope of just going right back, and where most of us not only gain the 80 pounds, we usually gain even more. So I am so glad that he reached out to you. But the pleasure trap was the next thing that I wanted to talk about is, you know, how do we help people get off that hamster wheel? Or how do
Well, you know, the pleasure trap's this hidden force that undermines health and happiness. It basically refers to this idea that the artificial stimulation of dopamine in the brain, dopamine is the neurochemical associated with pleasure, leads to an addictive response. And we know that that happens with drugs, and we know that that can also happen with the chemicals that we add to our food, and those chemicals being salt, oil, and sugar. So we know that salt, oil, and sugar aren't actually food. They're hyper-concentrated food byproducts. They're added to food to stimulate dopamine in the brain, so they make the food taste better. That's essentially what good taste is more dopamine stimulation, because your brain's designed to get as much to eat as possible so that you can, you know, get enough to eat, not get eaten, live to reproduce, because you evolved in an environment of scarcity. So the animals that got enough to eat were the few that survived. Most humans didn't. Your ancestors did. If any of your ancestors didn't, you wouldn't be here. So you're perfectly designed for an environment of scarcity, but now you live in this environment of abundance. And as a consequence, it's very difficult to not overeat. And that's why 70% of people are now overweight or obese. And because they're overweight, they have excess visceral fat. And the visceral fat produces inflammatory markers that cause heart disease, cancer, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, et cetera. That's essentially what the problem with modern disease is we eat more than we're designed to be able to process. We develop this type of fat, this visceral fat, and then we get sick and die a slow and painful death. What we suggest is by eating a whole plant food SOS-free diet, you can lose the extra weight, reduce the inflammation, and get well. And if you can't do it on your own, you can use fasting to make it happen even more quickly and more efficiently.
That's where I wanted to thank you for that, because that's exactly what I didn't want to forget was, so it's different. So my friend that just talked to you the other day, he's looking for something to help him reset. And I think reset is probably an appropriate word. So for me, resetting came by doing what you already assumed that I'd be doing, is removing caffeine and alcohol. So I'm glad that you're clarifying that those two things go hand in hand. I mean, you have to assume if you're getting SOS off your plate, you're taking off caffeine and alcohol.
Well, we assume that, yeah, drugs are eliminated. You know, one of the things you want to think about those, we even know if, let's just say, for example, salt. If people are on a high salt diet, it has problems, not the least, not just hypertension and the diseases that it causes, but also a process called passive overeating. That's how eating a high salt diet can make you fat. You think, well, how could salt make you fat? There's no calories in salt. But the effect of passive overeating means you will eat more of whatever you're eating of highly salted food than not. For example, if you just give eat your full, reach satiety of what, say, brown rice, you'll eat a certain amount and then you feel full. But if you, everything else being equal, salt that rice up, you'll eat more before your natural satiety shuts off your hunger drive. So if you're a mouse or a rat, you'll gain 49% of your body weight in 60 days just by putting these chemicals in the feed. If you're a bird, you'll get so fat you can't fly. These are not psychological, but rather biological realities. And for humans, if you give them a high salt diet, they will gain more weight than they would everything else being equal. So, but lowering the salt in the diet, at first the food tastes like disgusting, tasteless swill because you're addicted to that artificial stimulation of dopamine that comes from the chemical in your feed. You remove the chemical and you go through withdrawal effect. It takes about a month for people on a low salt diet consistently to neuroadapt to a low salt diet. But if you fast, by the time you're done fasting, most people are already neuroadapted to a low sodium diet. And we can prove that because we actually published a study looking at taste neuroadaptation, where you measure minimum threshold detection to salt and hedonic response to salty foods. And we showed that with fasting, that happens much more quickly. What's even more startling, though, is fat. If you're putting fat on your food, the oils and this type of thing, eating fried foods, it'll take almost 3 months on average for a person to adapt to a low-fat diet before they feel satiated on a healthy level of fat. And as a consequence, for 3 months, your brain's saying, hey, we're not getting enough calories. We're hemorrhaging strategic fat reserves. Go get us some fried foods or some oil. Put some olive oil on the salad. Do something. After about 3 months, you neuroadapt and you don't need that extra fat in order to feel satiated. But it's hard to get people to do anything for 3 months. And that's where fasting can make that happen very quickly. And so now people are willing to eat the whole plant food, SOS-free diet, rather than the greasy, fatty, slimy, dead, decaying flesh, highly processed foods that are what are creating the problems to begin with.
That's awesome. So just to be clear, I've heard before that sugar was somewhere 3 to 7 days to get it out of your system. Is that fair?
I don't know that you ever fully neuroadapt to sugar because, you are designed to detect sugar, and that's why fruits and other things taste good to you. And in a natural setting, it's really not a problem. It's only in the modern post-industrial world that you can get access to excess sugar. And so I don't know that it's ever completely adapted. It's kind of like an alcoholic. You neuroadapt where you don't need alcohol to function. But if you start drinking again, it's not long before the next thing you know, you're waking up naked under the Golden Gate Bridge wondering how you got there. So I think it's a slippery slope with sugar, and that for many people, they're better off avoiding it entirely, just like they might alcohol if they're quitting alcohol, than to tease themselves and pretend that now they're better and so they don't have to worry about it. That's where most alcoholics get into trouble. They get sober and then they think, well, I'm better now and I'm not vulnerable to the pleasure trap of alcohol and I can have just a little bit like a normal person. And they find out maybe that's not true. Some people can have alcohol and not become a drunk, but if you're a drunk, it's not you. And some people can have sugar and other things and not think about it and not overwhelm them. But if you're overweight or you're struggling with those issues, it may not be you. You may find it easier to just avoid the things entirely than it is to try to tease yourself with highly fractionated, highly processed foods.
The salt, how long does it take for the salt to flush out?
Well, normally in a feeding state, it takes about a month to adapt to a low salt diet. But with fasting, it happens very rapidly.
Yeah, so I suffered pain that I probably didn't need to suffer, if it's what you're saying.
Probably.
Yeah,
and
it
the
was
other
hard.
thing is with sugar is that sometimes you will neuroadapt to an extent that the old sugary desserts that you used to crave now are so sweet, they're tend to be less appealing. You might just as soon have a mango.
Oh man, and I tell you, just yesterday or day before yesterday, I was feeling guilty about the quantity of things I was eating, all within this newfound lifestyle. And then I was fortunately calmed by it was literally Dr. Lyle with Chef AJ yesterday talking about how we naturally will eat what we're supposed to when we remove processed foods and
Yes.
sugar, oil, or salt. So the fact that I was eating a huge bowl of blueberries, raspberries, and blackberries with some chia seeds on it and some hemp seeds on it, I felt guilty that I was eating this insanely huge bowl.
It's because you're conditioned to volumetrics and you're not you're not thinking, well, caloric density. So, one little bowl of ice cream has dramatically more calories than that huge bucket full of berries. And so, the way you can tell is if you're at your optimum weight or if you're overweight and you're losing weight at that expected ratio, then you're doing okay.
I'm still
losing weight rapidly enough, then what you can do is tighten up the screws, a little bit more low density food, a little bit less high density food, and you'll achieve your goals. And your goals, we know if you're a male and you're overweight, it's about 3 pounds a week. If you're a female, it's going to be 50% less, 2 pounds a week, because women have to work a lot harder than men because they're full of estrogen, which is a fat storage hormone, where men are full of testosterone, which is a fat burning hormone. So it's easier if you're a male than it is if you're a female. Just biologically, women are designed as energy conserving fat storage devices. So they have to store fat to survive a period of biological vulnerability called pregnancy. Not true for males. Doesn't mean we can't be fat, but we have to work harder at it.
Can you tell me a story? Can you tell me something about a time where somebody walks into the TrueNorth Health Center and they even surprise you because you just think that they're literally, their mindset is of a lost cause, but that has to have happened.
It's happened a lot of times. Well, you know, remember we've had 25,000 patients through the TrueNorth Health Center, but I'll tell you a story that I think was representative of a number of these issues. One was a gentleman, he was actually our first patient referred from the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 3, when we signed a
I used to be in Local 3 when I was a kid.
Local 3 signed us a contract with us that made any member of the union eligible to come to TrueNorth Health Center if they had diabetes or hypertension, no cost to the union member. And they could go through our program. We could do whatever we wanted to do because we were doing a study to determine whether it was cheaper to basically get people well or to cut their feet off when they had diabetes and that kind of stuff. So the very first gentleman they sent to us was a crane operator, and he was obese. He was diabetic, hypertensive. He was blood pressure was 220/120, capped out on 5 medications. And they didn't want him to run the cranes anymore because, you know, those cranes are expensive. And also thought maybe kill himself or others. So they said, look, you can go to this program and they will help you normalize your blood pressure so that you can go back to work. And of course, they told him everything except what the program was. So he had no idea what TrueNorth was all about and what fasting was all about. And he showed up thinking he was going to get another drug or something.
Hey, and operating engineers are very subtle people.
Oh my gosh. And he said, oh no, when he was looking around, he goes, he's in the wrong place. And I said, no, you're not in the wrong place. I have your name here on the list. You're here to get well. He goes, no, that's not me. I'm not sick. Right. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not sick? You're diabetic and you're hypertension. You're carrying a keg around your belly. I said, not only are you sick, you're going to die. And he said, well, aren't we all going to die? Which is, you know, a valid point. But I said, okay, got to take a different tack. And I said, look, you're on $880 a month worth of medications. If we get you healthy, you won't need those drugs. And he said, what do I care? I don't pay for the drugs, the union does. At this point, I realized this is not my normal self-selected, highly motivated TrueNorth Health typical patient. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I don't want to strike out with my very first referral from this union. And I'm thinking about, you know, diabetic, hypertensive male. What do we know about them? Well, they have a problem oftentimes. And so I said, okay, you know, if we get you off all that drugs, we might be able to do something about your, you know, problem. Yeah. And of course, he stands up and I'm thinking, I might be in trouble because this guy's a big guy. Yeah. And he looks at me and he says, why the hell didn't you just say so?
Wow.
So now I've got his attention and he's telling me about his diet. And he turns out he's a triple cheeseburger guy, but without the lettuce. If they put any lettuce on there, he'd take that out and throw it away. And so I thought, okay, before we try to treat this guy, we got to feed him a bit of real food because, you know, you can't be starting to fast off of triple cheeseburgers, or those are things that are going to become some cement in the colon, and then somebody's going to have to disimpact him. And with this guy, I didn't want to be the guy that was going to have to do that. So we give him some food, and he's trying to eat the food, but he can't seem to swallow it. He's like, and I sat down next to him. I said, it looks like you're having trouble with the food. Because I'm thinking, what does he have, like an esophageal tumor or something? And he said, what food? He said, this is not food. He said, this is disgusting, tasteless swill. And if I have to eat tasteless swill like this for the rest of my life, I'd rather just die. He says, why don't you go to my truck and get my 12 gauge? And when I'm not looking, just shoot me in the head. We checked him in. He fasted 26 days on water only, lost over 50 pounds. He normalized his blood pressure and blood sugar levels. When we're starting to feed him the food after the fast, same food. He's actually eating the food. And I sat down, I said, hey, it looks like you're doing better with the food. He said, yeah, your damn chef's finally getting the hang of it.
He thought it was a
20 minutes to convince him it was the same food. He said, no, that disgusting stuff you gave me when I came in was inedible. He says, this stuff's not bad.
Wow.
the fact is he wouldn't have complied for a meal if I just given him a piece of paper that said, oh, eat good food or something. But now after fasting, good food tasted good to him. So he was able to eat it. I saw him 6 months later at a semi-annual. We're doing blood pressure screen. I said, how you doing? He goes, I'm doing just fine.
ED's off the table. It's funny, the things that motivate us. Some people is, you try to hit them with money. Money wasn't doing it because he wasn't paying for it. All of a sudden you hit them with ED and that.
Yeah, no, I've learned to talk to people about the things they care about. I got a golfer who could be coughing up blood and he wouldn't go to the doctor, but if he loses 10 yards on his drive, now it's a medical emergency.
That's one of the things that I found fascinating. I only stayed at your place for 4 days, but and that was because of the quarantining. I couldn't quite have dialogue like I wanted to with people, but we sat outside on some of the days that weren't raining, and I talked to some of the people that go to you, and I find that fascinating. In and of itself, just going there and being intellectually stimulated by other participants, because you get people from all over the place.
Well, we have 50% of our people are from outside California, 15% are outside the United States. So we get a wide variety of people, about 1,200 admissions a year from all kinds of people. You get people that have, flying on their own private jet, to people that, really struggle, even with our nonprofit rate. So, it's an interesting diversity, but they have one thing in common, and that these are people motivated and they're willing to do anything, even eat well or exercise or go to bed on time or fast in order to get and stay well.
I'll tell you, I find your place so affordable that there are a lot of people out there that spend what it costs to stay over at your place. They spend it out in 2 restaurants a day.
Yeah. Well, we are a 501c3 nonprofit research-based organization. We look like a clinic, but we're kind of disguised as a clinic. We're actually a human subjects laboratory. And
I love that.
More affordable rates as a consequence of we don't have stockholders, we don't have anybody we have to satisfy. We don't do any advertising. We don't do any, spend any money on marketing or promotion or any of that.
So I'm in real estate. How long have you owned the building? The building's beautiful.
We've been in
it's a whole block, pretty much.
We've been we're 40 years in practice now. We've been in our current facility just slightly less than 2 decades, and so. We have a number of buildings there, the main facility, and then the 7 buildings that surround it. So we have kind of a campus now, which is really nice.
Really,
so we can offer a variety of accommodations, and also a lot of our staff live on site, and so we're able to, it is a 24/7 obviously operation. So we have right now 75 patient bedrooms that can handle either 1 or 2 people, and also we have. More than a dozen of our clinicians and staff that live on site as well. Wow.
So I'm curious as to right now, one of the things, the cause and effect of this, Dr. Goldhamer, is the discovery. I call my life, and as some people do, my life is basically, I use the metaphor, a hike. It's, I don't know what's around, I don't know what's over the pass or around the bend, but I'm always interested to find out. So I'm interested to find out kind of what comes next. I'm like 60 pounds down. I find myself that I put a goal. I told you last time we spoke, I put a goal. I want to go climb Mount Whitney sometime in July or August. I want to do a day summit. That's going to be a challenge, but I'm already hiking for it and doing some things in preparation for that. But in the middle of that, you're not going to believe that I have the energy to go jog. And as of 3 days, I've been jogging. Today, I jogged 2.5 miles. When you and I first spoke, I couldn't jog 2.5 blocks.
Yeah.
So this energy, this surge of energy is coming up organically for me. And there are times that I don't even know what to do with it, because now I find myself sitting very little during the day, and I'm walking the dogs not once, but twice a day, along with a run, along with a hike. And now I'm lifting weights. I'm doing things as if I was in high school again, which are just blowing my mind.
Well, all that's happening is you're going back to your normal healthy state, rather than the drug-induced suppressed ill state that you might have been living before. And so this is, you just have to adapt to it and adjust to the fact that, you're going to feel very different now, and you're going to have a different level of energy and focus. And that, can create its own challenges. Particularly, you can find yourself socially challenged, because especially for women, I think, as they lose weight and they get healthier, a lot of times they get treated, sometimes aggressively by their colleagues at work and other people. They get kind of annoyed and angry with them. And so because you create cognitive dissonance, you and your healthy smile and perky energy kind of make other people feel even worse by comparison. So they'll tend to try to take it out on you. So you have to learn to navigate that. And that's where our book, The Pleasure Trap, can be helpful. Dr. Lyle, the psychologist, has really helped people understand how to go along and get along with people when you're trying to get healthy, even though they absolutely are not interested in that and will try to undermine your success. And so you want to try to avoid those conflicts. And he gives you a lot of strategies in the book on how to address that and deal with that without annoying everybody else just because you've been successful.
Yeah, I'm doing all of the above. I mean, I'm annoying people, I'm impacting people. You know, I'm in conflict with some people. It's just really, I'm so glad that you brought it up. I had Dr. Lyle, we did an episode a few weeks ago. I think he's going to be on again 2-3 weeks from now. And I want to dive a little deeper into that because I'm finding out who my friends are and who my other friends are that are struggling with me.
Well, the good news is the more successful you get, the worse it'll be. So you'll definitely get an opportunity to develop those skills. And, you know, when you're all done, hopefully it'll work out well. But in the meantime, I can assure you, it'll just be one source of stress after another.
Is that something? Yeah, all of a sudden you put yourself first, you take care of yourself, and then it affects other people and it sort of threatens them. It's hard. And I think where it's hard for a lot of people when they're taking in information that's not fact-based. And you know, I have a friend that still shows me the pictures of the burgers that he eats every day with the big old glass of wine, and he knows that I'm doing this.
Yeah, and when we start talking about something really revolutionary like fasting, it really upsets people. And that's why we're busy publishing papers in peer-reviewed journals, trying to build a base of credibility so people understand that, yes, this is very counterintuitive. However, you know, it works. And so if we can prove that it works, then hopefully people would be motivated to give it a fair chance.
I wrote down the word satiety. And you know, I want to talk a little bit about that, a little more satiety, and also if you can help me understand a little more the stress receptors in our stomach and how those work, because I'm really lost when it comes to that.
Satiety just refers to the fact that the brain of all animals is designed as very accurate calorie detection device. That's why you do not see obesity in nature. So animals eating a natural diet maintain lean and mean state because they're in an environment of scarcity. They're usually struggling to get enough to eat overall. So you have sensitive indicators in your brain, though, that prevent you from consistently overeating. We fool those satiety mechanisms with highly processed foods. That's what sugar, oil, and salt do, is they fool the brain. And so now you will consistently overeat. And that's why 70% of people are overweight or obese. So if you take those overweight people and you just let them eat their fill or their satiated mechanism of fruits, vegetables, whole natural foods, they will lose weight. And we even know males lose about 3 pounds a week, women lose 2 pounds a week, more or less, depending on your activity level, et cetera. And so that natural mechanism, those mechanisms in your brain are designed to keep you from getting compromised by obesity. Well, some of those mechanisms are dependent on stretch receptors. For example, in the stomach, when the stomach gets full, then your brain knows, okay, I'm full. Well, when you're eating a whole natural food diet, it's very high in fiber and water, very low in caloric density as a whole. And as a consequence, the volumetric components of the diet help stimulate satiety. You also have mechanisms of fat receptors and sugar receptors and other things. So it's complicated. But the basic volumetrics is real simple. If you eat a lot of low density foods like salad with 100 calories a pound and fruit with 300 calories a pound, and rice and potatoes and vegetables at up to 500 calories a pound, and you fill the stomach up with that stuff, you will feel full. For example, if you fill a human stomach up with potato, it takes about 500 or 600 calories, and then the potato is full, assuming you don't put coagulated cow pus on the potato, just steamed potato. On the other hand, if you take bread, it only takes a third of the stomach to fill 500 and 600 calories. So it's much easier to overeat bread because before your stomach knows it's full, you've taken in 3 times the caloric density. With salad, it's virtually impossible to overeat because you can, salad only has about 100 calories a pound. You'd have to eat 20 pounds of salad a day just to be able to get your core energy needs met, the 2,000 calories.
It took me a while to understand the calories per pound.
Yeah. So salad has 100 calories a pound. Fruit has about 300 calories a pound. Potatoes, rice, and beans have 1,200 or 500 calories a pound. Whereas bread,
peanut butter. How about peanut butter?
Well, now you're getting into thousands of, so oil is 4,000 calories a pound. Chocolate's 2,500 calories a pound. Bread is 1,500 calories a pound without butter, and ice cream is 1,200 calories a pound. So, these are all massively more concentrated than the foods you're designed to eat, which is how we get massively fatter than we would get eating our fill of whole natural foods. So really what this diet is about is just getting people back to eating what you're designed to eat: fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds, not meat, fish, fowl, eggs, dairy products, oil, salt, and sugar. That's what it all comes down to, is getting rid of the highly processed animal foods, the sugar, oil, and salt. So getting on a whole plant food, SOS-free diet. SOS stands for the international symbol of danger, but it also stands for the chemicals added to food, salt, oil, and sugar, that make people fat, sick, and miserable.
I love that. And what would you say to people, because I'm struggling with some family members that I love and adore, but we're social creatures. We like to go out, we like to go drinking, we love wine, we love whiskey, we love food, we love Cuban food, Puerto Rican food, and we just like food. Yeah. So how has your life been being this way? Miserable?
Well, no, actually it's been fabulous. What happens is you don't need other people to eat the way you eat. You just need the kind of people willing to tolerate that you're doing. And so what I tell people to do is have your friends read The Pleasure Trap so they understand what you're doing. You're not asking them to do anything differently. You're just asking them to respect you for what you're doing. It's just like an alcoholic. You don't need all your friends not to drink, but you need them to stop bothering you about it and trying to manipulate you into participating in their bad habits. And most people will, that are decent people, will respect the fact that a person maybe can't drink alcohol successfully and leave them alone about it, not constantly give them a hard time. And you want to get that same kind of respect if you're trying to maintain optimum weight, and so you're choosing to eat a health promoting diet. Again, they don't have to do it, but they have to leave you alone enough to do it. And if they don't, you need to get rid of them and develop and cultivate friends that are willing to tolerate your habits so that you can sustain optimum health and happiness.
I so agree with that. It's funny because I have a coworker who is going through, right now is Ramadan, and it's maybe because I'm eating this way and I'm highly sensitive about what's around me, especially during the time when I'm just starting to get some traction and starting to enjoy the way that I'm living. I feel guilty, this poor guy is not even drinking water during the day, And
so it is a hard thing when you're one of those loving, caring people that's concerned about other people and you see them suffering needlessly and you know what the answer is. And it's very difficult to keep your mouth shut. But my advice is that you want to answer any question that's asked, but I wouldn't try to become a born-again natural hygienist and try to shove it down other people's throat. The most effective strategy is lead by example, become the kind of person that they want to be, and only answer the questions that they ask you directly, and don't go looking for the ability to shove it down their throat, because it won't work, because the informational immune system of the human being will come up and all you'll do is end up creating a lot of defensiveness. They come to you, they have a question, have them read a book, have them look at an article. The Pleasure Trap talks a lot about that, about how to go along and get along with people so that you can function in society, still be healthy, but not necessarily create any more stress than is necessary.
Well, another friend of mine and I were talking about, that old quote that says we're the average of the 5 people closest to us. And I really believe that. I believe that just by talking to you and talking to Dr. Wise, talking to Sandy, talking to Dr. Lyle, or just being exposed to the content that you guys put out there. That's been the biggest source of inspiration for me, and just getting and trying to whittle out of the pleasure trap. I never understood what a pleasure trap was until I read it.
It's really difficult because if you don't know about it, the chance of getting out of it's almost impossible. And if you know about it, it'll still be probably the most difficult thing you ever do in your life.
100%. 100%. So one of the last things that I wanted to cover with you, if you can indulge me a little bit, plasticity of the brain and getting clear, because I feel so much clearer. I feel like I can take in so much more information than I could have ever before. Mm-hmm. I consider myself to be accomplished, 0.01% accomplished in my field. I'll brag about that a little bit, only to say that I also dropped out of school in the 10th grade. So I don't have much of a formal education, but I've been very successful, even though I've been in this pleasure trap and very fuzzy in thinking.
Now, some people might argue you might have been successful because of your lack of education. You didn't get
Yes,
the programming, and so, you know,
Maybe.
that might have been a big advantage in some areas.
Can the brain improve with the foods that we're consuming and eating? Can our mental?
It's profoundly influenced by your diet. Just think about, you know, how sluggish you feel after indulging in greasy, fatty, slimy, dead, decaying flesh, highly processed foods versus when you go on a health promoting diet. It's not that the brain become enhanced, it just goes back to its normal functioning level. You're designed to be functioning at a high level, and all we're doing is stopping the suppression that's happening. And also your sleep quality improves dramatically. And during sleep, the purification process that happens, the oxidative damage that leads to so much damage is minimized. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor is enhanced with both exercise and with a healthy diet and fasting. And that BDNF tends to prevent the damage that occurs from oxidative damage. And that's why rats, for example, that exercise regularly don't get Alzheimer's disease or dementia. And the same thing appears to be true with intermittent and prolonged fasting. This profound increase in BDNF and other neurochemical changes that are associated with improved brain function. You don't have to believe any of that. You can just try it. Just go on a healthy diet. It doesn't take long, and people start, or fasting. I have patients that come in to fast. Sometimes I have one gentleman who writes screenplays, and he finds he functions a lot better in proximity to fasting and healthy diet. So he comes to us to work. And then, doesn't do much the rest of the year, but every year he comes in to write the next screenplay, and he does it in conjunction with healthy eating and fasting, because that's the only time he can function at that high a level.
I believe that. When I was
you can experience it.
I wrote some of my best stuff that I've ever written while I was at True North.
Yeah, we hear this comment hundreds of times a year from people like, not even something they're expecting. We don't usually talk too much about this because it's hard to quantify. But, and that's also why every major religion has a tradition of fasting. The Jews, the Jains, the Hindus, the Muslims, they don't agree on a lot, but they do all agree on that fasting has a role both for spiritual as well as physical benefit.
That's amazing. It's amazing how the body just wants to repair itself. It just needs to.
If any of your viewers would like, they can go to the website fasting.org, which is the website of the nonprofit TrueNorth Health Foundation. And it's a fasting compendium site. It has all of our research and other people's research on fasting, and they can take a look at that. It's all freely available. They can actually search the literature before Index Medicus came in, before PubMed was available, and they can search the older literature on fasting. There's over 1,000 articles there that's very interesting in human beings and effective fasting. And, if somebody's interested in talking about whether fasting might help them, they can go to our website at TrueNorthHealth.com, complete the registration forms. We offer a no-cost phone conversation to discuss whether or not this might be relevant to the individual. I'll review their medical history and give them my best advice. It costs them nothing.
Well, one thing, yeah, I did see that. I've encouraged a few people to do that. And one thing that I did notice, it was the difference between getting a physical at your place and getting your physical done at your traditional doctor that might spend actually your physical at Kaiser. I think I'm going to exaggerate and say they give you a whole maybe 12 to 15 minutes for an entire physical.
Yeah, well, the problem at Kaiser is those doctors have to see 26 patient contacts a day plus their email. So they can take however much time they want, but they're only going to be getting paid the same amount of time. So they tend to learn how to be fairly efficient. Yeah. They also want to focus, for example, on one problem, and I always joke that if you had crushing chest pain and it was radiating down the left arm, they'd ask you, which one do you want to talk about today? So it's really hard in that system with that volume of patient care to provide comprehensive education and assessment. So, I feel bad for the doctors that are forced to work in those environments. It works out well for us, though, because you notice the doctors at the TrueNorth Health Center, we've been growing the number of clinicians over time, but they virtually never leave. We're like the firm, they stay with us till they retire because it's really hard to go back to having to work with people that are not as motivated and not having the time to actually get the job right and never getting to see people get well. The most common comment of the residents participating in our residency training program is that, wow, they've never seen anybody get well with those conditions before. And, if you have high blood pressure, you're told you'll be sick the rest of your life, you'll never get well, and you'll be on drugs forever. And yet in our facility, we've got to study 174 consecutive patients with hypertension. 174 people lowered their pressure enough to get rid of medication. So, our expectation is that you're going to get well. And the conventional expectation is that you're never going to get well. And that's because they're not dealing with the cause of the problem.
So I told you that I dropped out of school in the 10th grade, Miami, Florida, experienced a little bit of the grit of the streets of Miami and all that early on in life, 15, 16 years old. And your path is very different than mine. What I understand about your path is, you were good at school, probably really good at school. But I've always been curious as to what led you to believe that, I guess, popular belief that it was a good idea to eat this way so early on. I think you started when you were 18 or 19 eating this
I actually started much earlier than that. The motivation began in 4th grade when Dr. Lyle consistently beat me in basketball. And we grew up together, and he was always beating me, and I always practiced. I worked hard. I was stronger than he was. I was bigger than he was, but for some reason I couldn't beat him. And so I started in desperation reading books, looking for an edge. And I came across a book on health by Herbert Shelton that said that health was the result of healthful living, and that healthful living involved diet, sleep, and exercise, and that a healthful diet was a whole plant food diet that didn't use the salt, oil, and sugar. And I thought, okay, well, I'll try that to see if I could get an edge, and then I would beat Dr. Lyle. And the problem is it failed, because he adopted the same diet. And to this day, I'm 64 years old. We play basketball. He still beats my rear every time. And so it's been a failure in that regard. But it has made me, sensitive to the idea that you can help people get healthy, which is kind of what the whole point of going to school was, and learning how to do this stuff. I have to say, I was also motivated by my uncle. He was a physician. And he said there was nothing worse than alternative medicine. That when he heard I was going to go into this field, he said that nobody in our family should ever go to a doctor like that, let alone be a doctor like that, and that better I should be a communist spy. And I remember my father on my 16th birthday took me aside. He said, "Son, I don't know anything about this alternative medicine, but anything that makes him that angry and mad, it can't be bad. So stick to your guns. Good luck to you."
Oh, you're amazing. Thank you for giving me this time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I'll keep sending people your way, because I know I'm saving their lives, or at least having some deep impact in their lives. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you again soon one day. Hopefully.
Okay.
Thank you.